The story of England begins long ago. After the Romans left Britain around the year 410 AD, new people came. These people sailed across the sea from lands in northern Europe. We call them the Anglo-Saxons. They were made up of different groups, mainly the Angles, the Saxons and the Jutes. They were strong warriors. They were looking for new lands to farm and to live on. Britain was a good place for them. So they came and they stayed, changing the land forever. These Anglo-Saxons did not form one single country at first. Instead, they created many small kingdoms. Think of it like a patchwork quilt, with different pieces next to each other. Historians often talk about 7 main kingdoms. This group of kingdoms is sometimes called the Heptarchy, which means 7 rulers. These kingdoms were Kent, Sussex and Wessex in the south. Then there were Essex, East Anglia and Mercia in the middle and east. And in the north was the powerful kingdom of Northumbria. Each kingdom had its own king and its own ways. Life in these Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was very different from life today. Most people were farmers. They lived in small villages with wooden houses. They worked hard on the land to grow food. The kings and their warriors were important. They fought to protect their lands or to take land from other kingdoms. There was often fighting between these small kingdoms. Each king wanted to be the most powerful. This was a time of change and sometimes a time of war, as these new societies took root in the land. The idea of England did not really exist yet. People thought of themselves as belonging to Kent or Mercia or Wessex, but slowly things began to change. Some kings became more powerful than others. They would try to control the weaker kingdoms around them. This was a long process, taking many hundreds of years. The Anglo-Saxons also brought their own language, which we now call Old English. They brought their own beliefs too, though Christianity started to spread among them from the late 6th century onwards, bringing new ideas and learning. Just as the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms were growing, a new threat appeared from the sea. From the late 8th century, warriors from Scandinavia began to attack Britain. We call these people Vikings. They came from lands we now know as Denmark, Norway and Sweden. Their long ships were fast and could travel up rivers. The Vikings were fierce fighters. They came to raid, to steal treasure from churches and towns. The first famous raid was on the monastery of Lindisfarne in 793 AD. It shocked the Anglo-Saxons deeply. These Viking attacks became more frequent and more serious. Soon they were not just raiding, they started to come with large armies. They wanted to conquer land and settle. A huge Viking force called the Great Heathen Army arrived in England in 865 AD. This army caused terror. It marched through the land, defeating Anglo-Saxon kings. One by one, the kingdoms of Northumbria, East Anglia and Mercia fell to the Vikings. It seemed like all of Anglo-Saxon England would be conquered by these fierce invaders from the north. Only one major Anglo-Saxon kingdom managed to survive this onslaught. This was the Kingdom of Wessex in the south. And the reason Wessex survived was largely down to one man, King Alfred. Alfred became King of Wessex in 871 AD, right in the middle of these terrible wars. He faced many defeats at first. He even had to hide in the marshes. But Alfred did not give up. He gathered his forces. He fought back bravely against the Vikings. His most famous victory came at the Battle of Edington in 878 AD. Alfred was more than just a warrior king. He was a very clever ruler. After his victory, he made a treaty with the Vikings. England was divided. Part of it, called the Danelaw, was ruled by the Vikings. The other part was ruled by Alfred. Alfred then worked hard to make Wessex strong. He built fortified towns called burhs. He reorganized his army. He even started a navy. He also believed learning was important. He encouraged education and translated books into English. Alfred is known as Alfred the Great because he saved his kingdom and laid foundations for a united England. Alfred the Great had saved Wessex. He had stopped the Vikings from conquering all of England. But the dream of a single, united English kingdom was not yet complete. After Alfred died, his son Edward the Elder continued his father's work. Edward, along with his capable sister Ethelflaed, Lady of the Mercians, fought many battles. They slowly began to win back lands that the Vikings had taken in Mercia and East Anglia. They expanded the influence of Wessex further north, pushing back the frontiers of the Danelaw. The task of truly uniting England fell to Alfred's grandson, Athelstan. Athelstan became king of the Anglo-Saxons in 924 AD. He was an ambitious and powerful ruler. He had a vision of a single kingdom of all English people. He was not content just to rule Wessex and Mercia. He looked north, to the Viking kingdom of York, and even further to Scotland and Wales. Athelstan was a strong military leader like his father and grandfather. He was determined to make his vision a reality, using both strength and diplomacy. Athelstan's most famous achievement was the Battle of Brunanburh in 937 AD. This was a huge and very bloody battle. Athelstan faced a combined army of his enemies. This army included the Viking king of Dublin, the king of Scotland, and the king of Strathclyde. They all wanted to stop Athelstan's growing power. But Athelstan and his English army won a great victory at Brunanburh. The battle was so important that it was remembered in poems and chronicles for many years. It confirmed Athelstan's dominance over the whole of Britain. After Brunanburh, Athelstan could truly call himself the king of all England. He was the first king to rule over the entire area that we now think of as England. He controlled a large and powerful kingdom. He created a strong government. He issued laws for all his people. He also made important connections with rulers in Europe. Athelstan's reign was short, as he died in 939 AD, but he had achieved something remarkable. He had taken the foundations laid by Alfred and built upon them to create the first unified kingdom of England. The unified England created by Athelstan continued for many years, but in the 11th century a big change was coming. In January 1066, the English king, Edward the Confessor, died. Edward had no children. This meant there was a problem about who should be the next king. Several powerful men believed they had the right to the English throne. One was Harold Godwinson, an important English nobleman. Another was William, the Duke of Normandy in France. A third claimant was Harold Hardrada, the fierce king of Norway. Harold Godwinson was quickly crowned King of England, but William of Normandy said that Edward had promised him the throne. William began to prepare an army to invade England. At the same time, Harold Hardrada also decided to invade from the north, so King Harold of England had to fight two enemies. First, he marched his army north very quickly. He defeated and killed Harold Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. This was a great victory for Harold, but he had no time to rest. Just days after Stamford Bridge, Harold heard bad news. William of Normandy had landed his army on the south coast of England. Harold had to rush his tired army south again. The two armies met near a place called Hastings on October 14, 1066. The Battle of Hastings was long and hard fought. For many hours, the English soldiers stood strong. But in the end, the Norman knights on horseback were too powerful. King Harold was killed in the battle. The English army was defeated. William, Duke of Normandy, had won. William marched to London and was crowned King of England on Christmas Day, 1066. He became known as William the Conqueror. The Norman conquest, as this event is called, changed England forever. The old Anglo-Saxon ruling class was replaced by Norman lords. French became the language of the court and government for a long time. The Normans built many strong stone castles all over England to control the country, like the Tower of London. They also ordered a great survey of the land called the Domesday Book. England was now ruled by a new foreign king and a new foreign aristocracy. Section 5. Kings, Barons and the Great Charter, the Plantagenets. After William the Conqueror, the Norman kings ruled England. Then, in 1154, a new line of kings began. These were the Plantagenet kings. The first Plantagenet king was Henry II. He was a very energetic and powerful ruler. He did not just rule England. He also controlled large areas of France like Anjou and Aquitaine. This created a vast territory often called the Angevin Empire. Henry II worked hard to make the king's power stronger. He made important changes to the English legal system, making it more organized and fair for many. One of Henry II's sons was Richard I, known as Richard the Lionheart. Richard was a famous warrior. He spent most of his reign fighting in crusades in the Holy Land or defending his lands in France. He was not often in England. His younger brother John became king after Richard died. King John was not as popular as Richard. He lost many of the Plantagenet lands in France. He also argued with the Pope. Most importantly, he upset many of the powerful English barons, the nobles of the land, with his high taxes and unfair decisions. The barons became so angry with King John that they rebelled against him. In 1215, they forced King John to agree to a list of rules. This document was called the Magna Carta, which means Great Charter. The Magna Carta was very important. It said that the king must obey the law, just like everyone else. It stated that people could not be put in prison without a fair trial. It also said that the king could not demand new taxes without the agreement of the barons. This was a big step towards limiting the power of the king. The Magna Carta did not solve all the problems immediately. There was more fighting between kings and barons in the years that followed. But the ideas in the Magna Carta were very powerful. They helped to shape the future of English government. During the Plantagenet period, another important institution began to develop Parliament. At first, it was a meeting of the king with his barons and church leaders. But over time, representatives from towns and counties also began to attend. This was the beginning of the English Parliament we know today, a place where laws are made and the government is checked. Section 6. Wars and Plagues, Turmoil and Transition. The later medieval period in England, under Plantagenet kings and their successors, was a time of great challenges. One major event was the 100 Years' War. This wasn't just one single war, but a series of conflicts fought between England and France. It lasted on and off from 1337 to 1453. The English kings claimed they had the right to the French throne. English armies won famous victories in France, such as at Crécy, Poitiers and Agincourt. These battles showed the skill of English longbowmen. The 100 Years' War had a big impact on England. It was very expensive. It cost many lives. But it also helped to create a stronger sense of English identity. People started to feel more English rather than just loyal to their local lord. The war also saw changes in how armies fought. Knights in armour were still important, but ordinary soldiers, especially archers, became vital too. In the end, England lost most of its lands in France. Only the port of Calais remained in English hands for a while longer. Around the same time as the 100 Years' War, another terrible disaster struck England. This was the Black Death. The Black Death was a dreadful plague that arrived in England in 1348. It spread very quickly and killed millions of people. Some historians think that almost half the population of England died. This had a huge effect on society. There were not enough people left to work the land. This meant that ordinary workers and peasants could demand better pay and more freedom from their lords. The late 14th and 15th centuries were also a time of political instability within England itself. After the strains of war and plague, different noble families began to fight for power. This led to a series of civil wars known as the Wars of the Roses. These wars were fought between two branches of the Plantagenet family, the House of Lancaster, whose symbol was a red rose, and the House of York, whose symbol was a white rose. For 30 years, from 1455 to 1485, England was torn apart by these bloody conflicts as kings were made and unmade. Section 7, the Tudors, a new dynasty and a new church. The Wars of the Roses finally ended in 1485. At the Battle of Bosworth Field, Henry Tudor defeated King Richard III. Henry Tudor became King Henry VII. He married Elizabeth of York, joining the two rival houses of Lancaster and York. This marriage helped to bring peace to England after so many years of fighting. Henry VII was a clever and careful king. He worked hard to make the monarchy strong again. He saved money and made sure the nobles did not become too powerful. He started a new line of kings and queens, the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII's son was Henry VIII. He is one of the most famous kings in English history. Henry VIII wanted a son to be king after him to continue the Tudor line. His first wife, Catherine of Aragon, had a daughter, Mary, but no surviving sons. Henry wanted to end his marriage to Catherine so he could marry Anne Boleyn. But the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church, would not allow it. So Henry VIII made a very big decision. He broke away from the Catholic Church in Rome. He declared himself the supreme head of the Church in England. This was called the English Reformation. The Reformation brought huge changes to England. Monasteries, which were rich and powerful Catholic institutions, were closed down. Their land and wealth were taken by the king. The Bible was translated into English so more people could read it. Church services also began to be held in English instead of Latin. After Henry VIII died, his young son Edward VI became king. Edward was a strong Protestant, but he died young. Then Henry's daughter Mary I became queen. Mary was a devout Catholic. England back to the Catholic Church, and many Protestants were persecuted. After Mary's death in 1558, her half-sister Elizabeth I became queen. Elizabeth I was a very clever and popular ruler. Her reign is often called the Golden Age. She found a middle way in religion, called the Elizabethan settlement, which tried to keep both Protestants and Catholics reasonably happy. England became stronger and richer under Elizabeth. English explorers sailed around the world. There was a great flowering of arts and literature with writers like William Shakespeare. A major event was the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, a fleet sent by Spain to invade England. This victory made England feel proud and secure. Section 8. Crowns and Conflict. The Stuarts and the Civil War. Queen Elizabeth I never married and had no children. So, when she died in 1603, the Tudor dynasty ended. The next king was James VI of Scotland. He was Elizabeth's cousin. He became King James I of England. This meant that England and Scotland now had the same king. This was called the Union of the Crowns. James I believed strongly in the divine right of kings. This idea meant that kings got their power directly from God, and only God could judge them. This sometimes brought him into conflict with the English Parliament, which wanted more say in how the country was run. James I's son, Charles I, became king in 1625. Charles also believed strongly in the divine right of kings. He clashed even more fiercely with Parliament than his father had. They argued about money, religion, and who had the ultimate power in England. Charles tried to rule without Parliament for 11 years, but he needed money, especially to fight wars. When he finally called Parliament again, the disagreements were worse than ever. These tensions eventually led to a terrible conflict, the English Civil War. The English Civil War began in 1642. It was fought between the supporters of King Charles I, called the Cavaliers, and the supporters of Parliament, called the Roundheads. The war divided the country. Families and friends found themselves on opposite sides. A brilliant military leader named Oliver Cromwell rose to prominence on the parliamentarian side. He created a powerful new army, the New Model Army. After several years of bitter fighting, the parliamentarians won. King Charles I was captured. What happened next shocked many people in England and across Europe. King Charles I was put on trial for treason. He was found guilty, and in 1649 he was executed. The monarchy was abolished. England was declared a commonwealth, a republic without a king. Oliver Cromwell became the most powerful man in the country. He was later given the title Lord Protector. For a few years, England was ruled without a king, but this period, known as the Interregnum, was also difficult, and Cromwell's rule became increasingly unpopular with some. Section 9, towards Union, Restoration, Revolution and a United Kingdom. After Oliver Cromwell died in 1658, his son Richard tried to rule. But he was not a strong leader. Many people in England wanted the king back. In 1660, the monarchy was restored. Charles II, the son of the executed Charles I, returned to England from exile. This event is known as the Restoration. People celebrated his return. Charles II was known as the Merry Monarch. He was more careful in his dealings with Parliament than his father had been. However, there were still tensions, especially about religion and the king's power. Charles II had no legitimate children to inherit the throne, so when he died in 1685, his brother James became king. James II was openly Catholic. This worried many people in Protestant England. They feared that James II would try to make England a Catholic country again. They also worried he would try to rule without Parliament, like his father Charles I. James II did indeed try to give more power to Catholics and ignore Parliament's wishes. This led to another crisis for the Stuart monarchy, as discontent grew rapidly. The crisis came to a head in 1688. A group of important English nobles invited William of Orange to invade England. William was a Dutch prince. He was married to James II's Protestant daughter, Mary. William landed in England with an army. James II's support collapsed, and he fled to France. This event is called the Glorious Revolution because it happened with very little fighting in England. William and Mary became joint king and queen, William III and Mary II. They agreed to a Bill of Rights in 1689. This document limited the power of the monarch and gave more power to Parliament. It ensured England would be a constitutional monarchy. The Bill of Rights also said that no Catholic could ever be king or queen of England. After William and Mary, Mary's sister Anne became queen in 1702. During Queen Anne's reign, a very important event happened. In 1707, the Acts of Union were passed. These acts joined the Kingdom of England and the Kingdom of Scotland together. They created a new single state, the Kingdom of Great Britain. This was a major step in the journey of the English state, merging it into a larger British entity, and marked the end of the independent Kingdom of England.